Hey everyone, welcome back to the Incredible India podcast series. I'm Sam, and I'm joined by our expert guide to context and connection, Taylor.
It is genuinely great to be back. We have such a rich topic today.
We absolutely do. Today we're leaving behind the large-scale political narratives and diving into something far more intimate, but just as revealing. A deep dive into the histories of Goa's grand mansions. We're specifically looking at two major examples, Braganza House and Sara Fernandes House.
And we're using some fascinating source material that focuses on the architecture, the culture, and especially the memory that's kind of, embedded in the stone and timber.
Right, the memory.
And that concept of memory is the absolute key here. Our sources really challenge the idea that these homes are just historic monuments, static relics you look at from a distance.
Okay.
They are, as the research calls them, inhabited archives.
Inhabited archives, I like that.
It's a great term, isn't it? They provide a microhistory, showing precisely how elite Goan society lived, how they adapted, and really, how they survived while living between worlds. This architecture, it's where the story of cultural negotiation truly reveals itself.
So that's our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
To understand those domestic strategies of identity.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack that core idea then.
Okay.
The mansion is a cultural strategy. You mentioned negotiation. The sources argue that this domestic architecture shows adaptation way more clearly than, say, public buildings.
Right.
Things like churches, colonial forts, government offices. Why is the home a better historian?
Well, it really boils down to purpose. Public buildings are, by nature, pretty rigid. They're designed to project an official, singular power narrative, in this case, Portuguese colonial authority.
A top-down statement?
A top-down statement, precisely. But domestic architecture has to be flexible. It has to serve the actual needs of people from, feeding a family to just avoiding the midday heat. And these Indo-Portuguese mansions, which started taking shape from the 16th century onward, they emerged at the exact moment Goan families were facing this profound transition.
What kind of transition are we talking about?
Mandatory colonial administration, huge religious pressures, and the rise of totally new social hierarchies. To survive and thrive in that new reality, the home had to become a statement, a refuge, and a strategy all at once.
I see. So if you're an elite Goan family adapting to this new power structure, you can't afford to look completely resistant, but you also can't you can't completely abandon your roots either.
You're walking a tightrope.
And the house becomes the physical manifestation of that tightrope walk.
Precisely. The goal was sophisticated cultural translation, not simple imitation. If you look at the facades, they incorporate European aesthetics.
Yeah.
You see the symmetry, the grand balconies or balcons, the ornate plasterwork.
Yeah.
But you immediately notice how they're integrated with centuries of accumulated Indian environmental intelligence. The design wasn't just to look European, it was engineered to live in Goa.
Can you give us a specific visual of that blend? What's one element that tells you they were translating, not just copying?
Think about the columns. In a standard Portuguese design, you'd expect textbook, European orders, Ionic, Corinthian, that sort of thing.
Right.
But here, they often used locally available laterite stone, which is much softer, naturally porous. So they might create the form of a classical column, but then they'd cap it with these distinctly local, often Hindu-inspired floral motifs.
Ah, so the shape is European, but the details are Goan.
Exactly. They were borrowing the European language of scale and status, but speaking it with a completely Goan accent and, a local material palette.
That insight is so crucial. It connects history directly to building science, which makes it incredibly relevant for us today.
It does.
So knowing they had to negotiate culture, how did they negotiate that relentless tropical climate without, air conditioning?
They engineered intelligence right into the walls themselves. If we dive into the building science, we find these brilliant passive cooling techniques that, frankly, should put many modern architects to shame.
Okay, let's get technical. What are we talking about? What are these design strategies?
First, you start with thermal mass. This is a hallmark of great tropical architecture. The walls are exceptionally thick, often 3 or 4 feet deep, built from laterite stone.
That's the reddish, porous rock you see everywhere in Goa.
That's the one. And laterite is fantastic for thermal mass. It absorbs the sun's heat incredibly slowly during the day. This delays the peak interior temperature until well after sunset, when the outside air is finally cooler.
So the inside is always lagging behind the outside temperature cycle, keeping the worst of the heat out.
Exactly.
Right.
Then you move inside and you just look up. The ceilings are immensely high, often 14, maybe 18 feet,
And that's not just for grandeur.
Not at all. It's essential physics. Hot air rises. These ceilings act like a natural chimney, allowing all that hot air to accumulate far above your head, which creates a cooler layer down near the floor where you're living.
And the verandas and porticos, I'm guessing they have a function beyond just being a nice place to sit.
Oh, they are the building's first line of defense. The verandas are critical transitional spaces. They create deep shade, buffering the interior walls and windows from direct, harsh sunlight.
So they stop the heat from even getting to the main wall.
They stop it in its tracks. And this is reinforced by large, shaded windows, often fitted with oyster shell panes or shutters, which let light in without the full heat load. And of course, the placement of all the doors and windows was carefully calculated to maximize cross-ventilation.
It's just amazing that building science today confirms all this. These techniques, using local materials like laterite and lime plaster, they solved the sustainability problem centuries before it was a buzzword.
What's really fascinating is that the materials themselves were part of the solution. The lime plaster, for example, was often mixed with crushed shells, which gave it hydrophobic properties, so it helped manage moisture. This wasn't wholesale importation of ideas. It was applied, refined, local knowledge.
Okay, so with that foundational architectural language in mind, let's look at how these principles played out. Let's start with the immense Braganza house in Chandor. What makes this mansion a symbol of scale and continuity?
Braganza House is, well, it's often cited in the sources as one of Goa's largest and most imposing surviving structures. It's a symbol of generational endurance. It's not a museum piece. It's been continuously inhabited. It functions as a living institution.
So large that it's actually divided, right?
It is. It's physically divided right down the middle, with two distinct branches of the same family occupying separate wings.
The scale is staggering, but you're right. The sources say the real insight is in the continuity. How do the interior layers of time reflect that cultural negotiation we were talking about?
You see a magnificent chaos of history inside. The sheer volume of the collection is just overwhelming. You walk into these vast ballrooms where priceless European crystal chandeliers hang above local rosewood furniture, which is often carved with these subtle regional designs.
And the family portraits.
The portraits are a fascinating archive in themselves. They chart the family's evolving identities. You see the shift from traditional Indian dress to European court fashions, and sometimes a blend of both. It's a literal visual timeline of their changing alliances.
And its religious history is also very layered, I understand.
Absolutely. The family maintained a strong connection to both local and colonial power structures. So the house features a stunning private chapel, a clear nod to their Catholic identity, but historical accounts show that spaces were also carefully maintained for non-Christian relatives and guests.
So it was built to accommodate both.
It was. It was structured to accommodate Hindu rituals and traditional practices, ensuring a kind of social inclusivity alongside their colonial participation. That spatial coexistence is a powerful record of how Goan society negotiated religious change.
So it wasn't just a grand private home, it was a semi-public institution.
That's the key sociological function the sources emphasize. It was a primary node of influence. These homes were essential for political networking, for arranging marriages, for lending money, for hosting huge gatherings. The scale was strategic. It commanded respect and provided a safe, influential setting for political discussion.
That sense of scale and institutional power is striking. Now, a Braganza house represents magnitude. Let's pivot to our second case study, the Sara Fernandes house in Ludelam. How does this offer a contrasting view?
Where Braganza is a statement of enduring scale, Sara Fernandes' house speaks of sophisticated elegance and restraint. It gives us a more intimate look at the quality of life, focusing less on sheer size and more on refined interaction.
So the design itself is different.
The fundamental architectural organization is different, yes. It's designed almost entirely around facilitating conversation, art, and intellectual exchange.
So less about commanding political scale and more about cultivating cultural depth.
Precisely. You find drawing rooms optimized for discussion, smaller courtyards perfect for quiet reflection, and specific spaces for music. Cultural historians actually categorize these mansions as cultural salons.
Cultural salons.
They were the crucibles where Goa's unique intellectual culture, its poetry, its music, its distinct literary voice, was really nurtured. It was a domestic university in a way.
And this ties directly back to that idea of shaping Goan identity.
Yes. From an anthropological perspective, these curated spaces were crucial for maintaining a sense of cultural rootedness while also participating in colonial modernity. It allowed families to get a European-style education, debate European philosophy, but do so within a structure that fundamentally respected local traditions. Sara Fernandes' house just perfectly embodies that balance.
Okay, we've dissected the plans, the materials, the functions, but the sources are emphatic about something. Reading about these spaces isn't enough. They say photographs flatten the
They
experience.
do.
Why is actually stepping inside so essential to understanding the architecture's intelligence?
Because the intelligence is dynamic, not static. A photograph gives you color and form, but it strips away all the sensory data that tells the real story. When we talked about thermal mass, you can't see a wall delaying heat. You have to feel it.
You mean actually feeling the temperature shift as you move from room to room?
Absolutely. You need to experience that sharp temperature drop as you move from the sun-drenched street onto the shaded veranda and then into the core of the house. It feels like stepping into a refrigerated space, even on the hottest day.
Hmm.
You need to register the sound changes, how those thick walls create an immediate zone of silence, and you have to observe the movement of light, how the high windows or oyster shell panes filter that harsh glare into a soft ambient glow. That dynamic interaction is the lesson.
It sounds like the guide, then, becomes absolutely essential. They're the interpreter of those silent architectural cues.
Heritage studies confirm this. A guided interpretation in these spaces totally transforms the visit. A guide helps you decode the symbols you'd otherwise miss.
For example,
For instance, explaining why the main rooms face north or south, it wasn't random, it was to minimize sun exposure, or why the furniture is arranged in a particular, highly formal way that signals status. The guide connects the physics of the building back to the human story.
turning stone and timber into lived history.
Exactly.
Which brings us full circle, back to the cultural strategy. These homes were designed to physically accommodate the environment while politically accommodating a colonial power, all without sacrificing their core identity.
That's the unifying takeaway, and it's a provocative thought for all of us, really. The history of these magnificent Goan homes shows us that adaptation, thoughtful, localized, intelligent adaptation, is the most successful long-term strategy. It wasn't about copying, it was about integrating the best of all worlds.
And the lesson for us today. What else in our modern lives, be it design, business strategy, or even just our social interactions, could benefit from that kind of thoughtful adaptation rather than just reaching for the easiest, most imported solution?
Something to think about.
Something for you to chew on as you reflect on this deep dive. Thank you for guiding us through these remarkable lived archives.
My pleasure.
If you decide to travel to Goa, we have a recommendation. Five Senses Tours organizes tours across India, which are immersive cultural experiences. You can email contact@fivesensestours.com. Note 5 is written as a numeral in contact at fivesensestours.com. Or WhatsApp to +919 845 677 446.